He said he loved me. But love doesn't come with conditions. And definitely not immigration paperwork. Sometimes, the people we think are our soulmates turn out to be actors playing a role so convincing, we forget to question their motives. I gave him my heart, my trust, and a new life in my country. What he gave me? A lesson in self-worth I will never forget. Before we dive into this emotional roller coaster, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a real-life story that just might mirror your own. Get ready for twists, revelations, and the ultimate payback served with grace. I used to believe that heartbreak only came once, the kind that leaves you breathless, staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering how something so beautiful turned to dust in your hands. But no one ever told me heartbreak can come dressed in charm, wearing a smile so sincere it disarms your every instinct. My name is Angela Lawson. I'm 32, a wellness entrepreneur, and if I had to describe myself in one word, it would be resilient. Not because life's always been easy, but because it's always been honest. Until him. Let me take you back. It all began at an event I almost didn't attend. I was standing by the complimentary juice bar at the TechX Wellness Business Mixer, silently regretting not staying home with my potted plants and chamomile tea. Networking wasn't my thing. But growth is rarely comfortable, right? And then he walked in. I didn't see him at first. I heard him, deep laughter, rich with confidence. When I turned, I saw a man in a navy blue suit that fit like it was tailored by fate. His name? Diego Santos. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with caramel-toned skin, thick dark curls, and a slight Brazilian accent that melted into his words like honey in hot tea. His eyes found mine across the room, and I felt something, a spark, a hush, an inexplicable pull. He walked up, smiled, and said something so cheesy it should have made me roll my eyes. If I told you I was here just to meet you, would that be too forward? I laughed. Maybe too hard. I was nervous. We talked. And talked. And somehow, 3 hours passed without me realizing I hadn't checked my phone once. He told me he was a tech entrepreneur, finishing a postgraduate degree at UNCC. I told him about my online wellness coaching program, my journey from a corporate burnout to a woman who found peace in green smoothies and guided meditation. He listened. Really listened. His attention made me feel seen. And seen is something I hadn't felt in years. It's funny how we crave connection, but still build walls around ourselves. I'd been divorced for almost 3 years. My ex-husband, Kevin, was predictable. Safe. But he never really saw me. He loved the idea of who I was, not the woman I was becoming. When our marriage crumbled, I promised myself I'd never settle again. Yet here I was, letting a stranger make me laugh like I hadn't in ages. He invited me to a small, cozy cafe in the South End. Not some overpriced, flashy place, but one of those charming hole-in-the-wall spots with handwritten menus and a bookshelf by the restroom. He ordered in Portuguese for both of us. Then, with a sheepish grin, he said, "Don't worry. I only ordered food. No marriage proposals. Yet." I laughed again. Diego had this uncanny ability to put people at ease. When he talked about Brazil, about his childhood in Sao Paulo, his late grandmother, and the mango tree he used to climb, I felt like I was listening to poetry. By the third date, he brought me dinner. Homemade feijoada, a rich Brazilian stew. He said, "Where I come from, we cook for the people we care about." I was falling. Slowly, beautifully, dangerously. Sometimes love doesn't feel like a punch of lightning. Sometimes it's quieter than that. A slow, warm drizzle after months of drought. That was Diego. We started spending most evenings together. He'd show up at my house with warm pastries and those heart-shaped post-it notes with messages like "Your smile outshines any sunrise." I know. It sounds like a movie. I felt like I was living one. He asked about my childhood, my fears, my hopes. He remembered the small things, like my obsession with vintage jazz records and the way I hated talking during movies. One night, while we were curled up on my couch watching La La Land, he turned to me and said, "Angela, I've been alone for so long. But when I'm with you, it feels like home." I wanted to cry. I didn't, though. I just rested my head on his shoulder and whispered, "Me too." I brought him to dinner with my friends. He was perfect, charming, articulate, even washed the dishes afterward. My best friend, Tasha, leaned over and whispered, "Girl, don't mess this up. He's a unicorn." My parents were a little more reserved. My mother, especially. She's the kind of woman who believes in second helpings and sixth senses. After dinner, as she walked me to my car, she asked, "How long have you known him?" "Almost 4 months," I said. She nodded slowly. Then added, "Just take your time, Angela. Not everyone who smiles at you has clean intentions." I rolled my eyes and gave her a half hug. I loved my mother, but she had a radar for red flags that could sometimes feel more like paranoia. At the time, I didn't listen. But hindsight is cruel, isn't it? When you look back, you realize the signs were always there. You just chose to see them as stars, not sirens. On the night we celebrated our 5-month anniversary, he brought over wine, roses, and a small velvet box. My heart pounded. I opened it to find a simple but elegant silver ring. "Angela, I know it's fast. But I can't imagine life without you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes. I didn't even think. I said yes. He held me close, whispering, "You've just made me the happiest man alive." And for a moment, I truly believed it. That was the beginning. Of what, exactly? At the time, I thought it was forever. But sometimes the beginning of a love story is just the prologue to a lesson. One you'll never forget. The morning after Diego proposed, I woke up smiling. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into a dream that decided to stay. The ring sparkled on my finger like a secret finally told. I spent the early hours lying in bed, replaying every word he said, every expression that danced across his face. His voice was still in my head, soft and certain, telling me I made him the happiest man alive. It had been just 5 months, yes, but it had felt like lifetimes compacted into days. I had never felt this certain about anyone. And yet, as I looked at my reflection in the mirror that morning, there was a flicker, small, almost imperceptible, but there. A hesitation that I brushed off as nerves. I called Tasha first. She screamed through the phone and demanded pictures of the ring. "Girl, you bagged a dreamboat," she said. "He cooks, he listens, he looks like he walked out of a romance novel." "I'm not saying you're lucky, but, okay, I'm saying you're lucky." I laughed, but I also felt the subtle pressure build. I wasn't afraid of marrying Diego. I was afraid of ruining something that felt so perfect. Too perfect, maybe. We began planning the wedding the next week. Diego was oddly indifferent about most of it. He told me, "Whatever makes you happy, my love." I thought it was sweet, the way he deferred to me, but even sweetness has its shadows. He never asked about venues, colors, or traditions. He only asked one thing. "Can we make it happen soon?" I blinked. "Soon?" "Yes. Within a month, maybe. I want to be your husband. I don't want to wait." His intensity felt flattering at first. Romantic. But my mother's words whispered at the back of my mind, "Take your time, Angela." Still, I agreed. I told myself we were adults. We knew what we wanted. We set a date, for weeks from that conversation. I pushed the doubts aside, boxed them neatly under cold feet, and continued building a life with the man I thought I knew. The first real crack came 2 weeks before the wedding. We were filling out forms for the marriage license when I saw the question, "Are you a citizen of the United States?" He hesitated. Then he said, too casually, technically, no. But I have a student visa. It's just paperwork. I looked up at him. You didn't mention that before. He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. It didn't seem important. I'm here legally. It's all good. I didn't push. I told myself love didn't need passports or paperwork. It needed trust. And I trusted him. Until the second crack appeared. The night before our joint wedding shower, Diego received a call. I heard his voice raised, just slightly, as he slipped into Portuguese. I couldn't understand the words, but I could hear the agitation in his tone. When he came back, I asked, everything okay? He smiled, lips tight. Just family stuff. You know how it is. I nodded, but something about the way he avoided looking at me made my stomach turn. I was starting to see the edges of something he didn't want me to see. The next day, I walked into my office to grab a printout for the event, and my laptop was open, something I never left it. Diego had borrowed it earlier that morning. An email sat in the corner of the screen. Half-typed. It read, once I get the papers, things will move faster. That was all. No name. No context. Just those words. My hands trembled. I closed the laptop without reading further. I told myself I was overreacting. There could be 100 explanations. But that was a lie. I knew in my bones that something wasn't right. So, I started watching. Quietly. Carefully. I noticed how every conversation about our future was vague from his side. How he never talked about settling down in Charlotte. How he never asked about house hunting or long-term plans. How every promise was wrapped in flattery but hollow underneath. I confronted him one evening. Diego, are you marrying me because you love me, or because you need something from me? He looked hurt. How could you say that? I didn't answer. I just watched him. And for the first time, I saw something beneath the charm. A flicker of calculation. He stood, walked to the window, ran a hand through his hair. I thought we trusted each other, he said softly. I did, I replied. He turned back. I love you. I chose you. Isn't that enough? It should have been. But the foundation was cracking, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. That night, I stayed at Tasha's. I told her everything. She listened, jaw clenched. You need to slow down, she said. Don't cancel the wedding yet. Just watch. Watch what he does next. So, I did. And what I saw in the days that followed changed everything I thought I knew about Diego Santos. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't abusive. But he was hiding something. And I was about to find out exactly what it was. The moment Diego left my apartment after our confrontation, I stood in the silence and let every emotion wash over me. There was pain, yes, but beyond that, a dark clarity. I had loved him with the kind of hope you only give once. And he had reduced it to paperwork. It wasn't just that he lied. It was that he made me believe in a love that never existed. But here's what Diego didn't know about me: I wasn't the type to crumble. I didn't come from fragility. I came from fire. I wouldn't just walk away broken. No. I would walk away smarter. And he would never forget what he lost. For a while, I kept my distance. I didn't reply to his messages. I didn't return his calls. Instead, I started watching him, not through jealousy or desperation, but with precision. I noticed he still attended his weekly soccer meetups with his friends at the park near Westmore. I knew he still volunteered at the animal shelter on Saturdays, not because he was kind, but because it looked good on immigration records. And every Thursday, he video called his family from the cafe 2 blocks from my office. I wasn't stalking. I was studying. You see, I wasn't going to destroy Diego. I was going to teach him. I started with my silence. No drama. No tears. Just absence. Tasha said it best, there's no punishment greater than indifference after betrayal. And yet, I wasn't idle. I told my parents the wedding was postponed for personal reasons. I pulled out of our joint catering contracts, returned the custom decorations, and reclaimed every deposit. Diego never questioned it, at least not out loud. And when he asked to meet, I said, not yet. Then I did something he never expected. I invited him to dinner. 1 week later. He showed up wearing that same overconfident grin that once melted me. Angela, he said, arms opening. I didn't step into them. I gave him a polite smile and gestured to the seat across the table. He looked confused, but he sat. Thank you for coming, I said smoothly. I've been doing a lot of thinking. His face lit up. Me too. I was hoping we could start over. No secrets this time. I nodded. Exactly. But before that, I want us to be honest, completely honest. His smile wavered. Of course. So I began asking questions. Soft ones. Gentle ones. Questions that slowly led him to talk about Anna. And he did. He admitted she had backed out at the last moment, leaving him desperate. How his family had pinned all their hopes on him staying in the US. How, when he met me, it felt like fate had offered him another door. And then? I asked. I fell for you, he said, eyes searching mine. But the papers? I stopped caring about them, he said too quickly. Lies again. But I let him dig. After dessert, I leaned forward and said calmly, you know, I did some digging too. His fork paused midair. I know about the letter. The messages. The conversations with Anna. His face turned pale. I continued, still composed, you wanted a marriage certificate. Not a marriage. You wanted a visa. Not a life. He opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. I'm not here to fight, Diego. I'm here to help you get what you wanted. Just not the way you imagined. His brows furrowed. What do you mean? I smiled. I'm going to help you stay in the country, but not as my husband. As my employee. He blinked. What? I just opened a new marketing consultancy. And I need someone who speaks Portuguese and Spanish for our Latin America expansion. I'll hire you legally, on a work visa, as a contractor. No strings. No ring. He stared at me like I had grown 2 heads. You'd do that? Oh, I'm not doing it for you, I said, folding my napkin. I'm doing it for me. To prove to myself that I can love someone, be betrayed, and still rise without sinking to their level. But let's be clear, this is business. You don't get me. You don't get my heart. You get a paycheck and permission to stay. That's your win. That's your lesson. His voice was hoarse. You'd really rather offer me a job than marry me? I looked him square in the eye. Yes. Because I want you to live with the reminder every single day that you lost a woman who would have given you everything. But instead of burning you, I'm giving you what you wanted, just without the privilege of love. He said nothing. He sat there in silence, choking on humility, drowning in his own reflection. I gathered my things. Oh, and you'll report to Tasha. She's your new direct supervisor. She doesn't like liars, so I'd suggest full transparency. With that, I left. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't wonder if he still loved me. Because the lesson had been planted. And in time, it would grow into something he'd never be able to shake off. Diego reported to work the following Monday at exactly 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. It was the first time I had ever seen him without the breezy charm that used to come so naturally to him. No cologne. No carefully styled curls. Just a man in a cheap button-down, carrying the weight of his consequences. Tasha didn't go easy on him. She gave him a cramped desk in the farthest corner of our co-working space, sandwiched between the janitor's closet and the copy machine. No privacy. No peace. Just constant reminders that he was starting from the very bottom. I watched from a distance, arms folded. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. When you try to build your future on someone else's trust and then shatter that trust, you should be made to rebuild, with bricks you carried yourself. In meetings, Diego barely spoke. Tasha, who had never liked him much after what he did, made sure he stayed within bounds. No special treatment. No nods to our history. He was now Diego Santos, junior multilingual content strategist. Entry level. No benefits yet. But here's the interesting part. He showed up. Every day. On time. Focused. 2 weeks into the job, he stayed back after hours to help our graphics intern complete a failed pitch presentation. 3 weeks in, he translated a dense client proposal overnight, accurately, thoroughly. 4 weeks later, one of our Brazilian clients wrote in personally to commend the thoughtful young man who helped clarify their branding strategy. Was it guilt? Shame? Redemption? I didn't know. But I saw it. Diego was changing. Still, I made no move. I offered no soft words. No glimpses of hope. That, I knew, was the real lesson, letting someone carry the weight of their actions without holding their hand through it. One rainy Thursday, I caught him standing by the kitchen window of our office. He looked older somehow. Tired. Humbled. I walked in, silent. He noticed me, and something flickered in his eyes. Angela, he said carefully, I know we're not. I mean, we're done. I get that. But may I say something? I nodded once. He hesitated, then looked out the window again. Every day I come in here and sit at that desk, I remember who I used to be. And I hate him. I didn't respond. He continued, but this, working here, doing the work instead of taking shortcuts, it's been the best punishment I could have asked for. Because it's made me realize that the person you thought I was? That's who I want to be. Not to win you back. But because I want to live with integrity, not manipulation. I studied him. That night, I couldn't sleep. There's a strange ache that comes from watching someone change after they've broken you. You root for them, because you see the potential. But you never forget the damage they caused. So I stayed silent. I let him grow on his own. 6 months passed. Diego became a quiet pillar at the company. He didn't flirt. He didn't pander. He worked. He took criticism without flinching. He mentored the new hires. I heard him once, through the thin office wall, tell a client on a call, it's always better to build something slowly and honestly than fast and dirty. I had to learn that the hard way. I closed my laptop and just stared at the wall. My heart was quiet, but my mind raced. Maybe people can change. Maybe, when held accountable without cruelty, transformation takes root. On our company's 1-year anniversary, I hosted a private team dinner. Just 20 of us. Candlelight. Toasts. Reflections. I stood at the front, thanking my team for their loyalty and grit. Then I paused. Looked at Diego. And to the one person in this room who knows that mercy doesn't mean forgetting, but learning, I say thank you. For showing up. For showing us that consequences don't have to end you. They can also rebuild you. He didn't smile. He nodded, jaw clenched, eyes glassy. That night, he didn't approach me. But the next day, a letter appeared on my desk. Angela. You didn't punish me. You empowered me to see myself through your eyes, and that was the sharpest mirror of all. I'll never be able to undo the betrayal, but I hope I can live in a way that makes it matter less every year. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. And thank you for not saving me, because I needed to save myself. Always. Diego. I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer. I didn't reply. Because the lesson had already landed. And it was deep enough to last him a lifetime. 1 year and 4 months. That's how long it had been since Diego sat across from me at that dinner table, thinking I might take him back. Thinking I was the same woman who used to daydream about baby names and brunch dates and white dresses. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I was something better. And he was finally beginning to understand what it meant to lose something that can't be replaced. My company had grown rapidly. 3 new contracts. A budding partnership with a firm in Toronto. We were no longer a modest startup. We were a name people respected, and I was the woman behind it. Funny, isn't it? How sometimes pain clears the path for power. Diego was still there. Still clocking in before dawn, still the first to volunteer when a deadline loomed. He never asked for favors. Never brought up the past. But the past doesn't disappear. It echoes. Softly, yes, but constantly. One afternoon, I walked into the office kitchenette to find Diego scribbling notes for a training deck. His coffee had gone cold. He looked up when I entered, and for a moment, I saw it, the way his eyes lit up like he wanted to say something. Then he lowered his gaze. "Coffee's fresh," I said, walking past him. "You might want to refill that." He nodded. "Thank you." And that was it. That's how things were now, polite, professional, polite again. But I had one final move. Not to ruin him. No, I wasn't interested in breaking someone who was already rebuilding themselves. I just needed to close the circle. To complete the lesson. When the offer came from Toronto, I waited before telling anyone. It was a senior consulting role that would require me to relocate, 6 months minimum, possibly permanent. It was a huge opportunity. And it was perfect. Tasha was thrilled for me. "You deserve it, Ange. This is the big league." I smiled. And then, I called Diego into my office. He stepped in, cautious but curious. "I wanted to let you know," I began, "I'll be stepping away in 3 weeks. Temporarily, maybe longer. Tasha will take the interim leadership role. We'll restructure accordingly." He blinked. "You're leaving?" "Expanding," I corrected. "This is part of growth. You'll be fine." He nodded slowly. "Congratulations. You deserve it." "I know," I said simply. He swallowed hard. "Angela, can I ask something?" I tilted my head. "Do you ever regret not taking me back?" And there it was. I leaned back in my chair, calm and still. "No," I said softly. "Because taking you back would have robbed you of this version of yourself." "You think this growth came from love?" "No. It came from loss. You didn't need my affection, you needed my absence." He sat there, stunned. I continued, "And me? I didn't need a second chance with you. I needed to prove to myself that I could survive betrayal and still become someone extraordinary." He looked away, blinking rapidly. I wasn't done. "Diego, everything you built here, every hour you clocked in, every weekend you gave up to get it right, it wasn't for me. It was your redemption arc. Your character development. Not our love story. Just yours." His voice cracked. "So that's it?" I stood up. "No. This is your beginning. And my final lesson." 3 weeks later, I boarded the plane to Toronto. Diego didn't come to the airport. He didn't send flowers or write another letter. But he left something else. An envelope. Inside, a simple card. "Angela. You gave me the gift of consequences. You taught me that not all pain is punishment, sometimes it's preparation. I will never forget that. Or you. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope I earned your respect. D." I closed the card, tears blurring the words. He had learned. Not through fear. Not through manipulation. Not even through regret. But through the long, patient unfolding of real accountability. That was my payback. Not revenge. Not scandal. But watching a man who used to lie to stay, finally become worthy of staying. And knowing that while he learned that lesson, I rose. Toronto was cold, crisp, and clean in a way New York never could be. There was space between things, space to think, space to breathe. And I needed that. I settled into a sleek one-bedroom loft, started my new role, and did what I'd always done. Show up, deliver, exceed. But something had shifted. Not in the way I worked, but in the way I saw myself. Before Diego, I used to measure my worth by what I could give, my love, my time, my trust. I poured myself into people and called it generosity. But in Toronto, I was pouring into myself for once, and it didn't feel selfish. It felt necessary. My mornings started with walks around the harbor. My evenings ended with tea and quiet books. For the first time in a long time, no one needed me. And that solitude? It didn't scare me anymore. One night, after a particularly long board meeting, I got a text from Tasha. He's still here. Still working hard. Never late. Never distracted. Thought you should know. I stared at the message. No reply. Because I knew that. Deep down, I had always known he would stay the course. That was the entire point of the lesson. The test wasn't whether he'd become better for me, it was whether he'd stay better when I was gone. Months passed. Winter melted into spring. My contract was extended. Then it became permanent. My company back in New York? It didn't just survive, it blossomed. Tasha had become a force. Our once small team now had a waiting list of interns and aspiring marketers begging to work under her leadership. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at a conference about ethical leadership and brand storytelling. Afterward, a young woman approached me. You spoke like someone who's been through something, she said shyly. I smiled. Haven't we all? She nodded. But most people hide it. You turned yours into wisdom. And that's when I realized. My story with Diego? It had never been about heartbreak. It was about transformation, his and mine. And mine was louder. In July, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a leather-bound journal. On the first page, in Diego's handwriting. I started writing the day you left. I didn't know how else to stay honest. This isn't for you to forgive me. It's just so you'll know, I kept learning. Even when you stopped watching. I didn't read it. Not then. Because the point wasn't what he wrote. The point was that he had written it, for himself. Years later, when my name appeared on Forbes' 30s in marketing, I stood before the camera, accepting my award, smiling softly. Someone asked from the crowd, what was the hardest decision you ever had to make? I answered without pause. Letting someone I loved lose me, so they could find themselves. And in that moment, I felt no regret. No anger. No what-ifs. Just peace. Because real payback doesn't scream. It whispers. It sits in the silence of your own strength, knowing you didn't have to burn someone to rise, you just had to rise while they watched. And that? That stays with them forever. It had been nearly 2.5 years. 2.5 years since I had walked away. Since I had chosen power over pity. Purpose over promises. Peace over performance. Toronto had become home. The crisp, orderly rhythm of Canadian life matched the new tempo of my heart. Everything moved slower, but with more intention. I had grown into a woman who no longer needed applause to validate her choices. A woman who didn't explain her boundaries, only enforced them. And then, one quiet Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find a package on the step. No sender name. Just my name, elegantly penned, like a whisper from the past. I brought it inside and opened it slowly. A frame. Inside it was a single quote, embroidered in delicate gold thread. The ones we remember are the ones who made us better, not the ones who stayed. No name. No note. But I knew. I didn't need a signature. Diego's silence was signature enough. I placed the frame on my bookshelf, nestled between volumes on leadership, strategy, and poetry. It didn't haunt me. It didn't make me cry. It simply acknowledged something we both understood. The best lessons don't need to be shouted. They echo, gently, through every choice we make after. 6 months later, I was invited to keynote a global women's leadership summit in Montreal. My face was now associated with strength, vision, and resilience. The press often speculated about my personal life. Was I dating? Was I married? Was there a mystery man behind my confidence? The answer was no. There was no mystery man. Just a mystery woman, me. I had become the kind of woman I once thought only existed in books and late-night movie scenes. Calm. Unshakable. Focused. Loved, most importantly, by herself. During the summit, a panelist beside me asked, "What advice would you give someone who feels betrayed but still wants to love again?" The audience grew quiet. I smiled and leaned into the mic. Don't seek revenge. Seek clarity. Revenge makes you act for them. Clarity makes you choose for yourself. There was a beat of silence, then thunderous applause. But my eyes drifted to the back of the room. A figure. Standing. Not clapping. Just watching. Tall. Familiar. Diego. My breath caught, but I didn't flinch. I had been preparing for this moment for years. After the event, he approached slowly, like a man respectful of boundaries. He waited as others gathered their things and filtered out. "Angela," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a greeting. Soft. Earnest. "Diego." He took a breath. "I didn't come to win you back. I just wanted to say thank you. In person." Finally. I nodded. "You did the work. You thanked me by becoming someone better." His eyes were glossy. "You saved me from being the man I had become comfortable being." I let the words settle. Then I asked, "Do you still think it was all worth it?" He smiled faintly. "The pain? Yes. The loss? More than I knew." I extended my hand. "Then we're good." He looked at it for a long moment before shaking it gently. "Diego, you're free to leave if you want to. You no longer have to work with the company." As he walked away, he turned once, hesitated, and then said, "You taught me the cost of selfishness. But you also taught me the value of change. Thank you." And with that, he was gone. No grand gestures. No dramatic pleas. Just a man finally at peace with what he lost, and a woman more whole than she had ever been. That night, I lit a candle by my window. Not for him. But for the girl I used to be. The girl who once thought love was about holding on. Now, I knew better. Love, true love, sometimes means letting go with grace. And payback? Payback is when they realize your absence was their greatest teacher. The days after seeing Diego again were calm. Not the kind of calm that comes before a storm, but the one that follows it. A quiet peace, settled and satisfying. I didn't tell anyone about the encounter, not even Tasha. I didn't need to. It was mine. It was a Sunday morning when I got the email. It was from Diego. Subject, closure. It was short. "Angela. You taught me what it means to love without entitlement. What it means to walk away with dignity, even when everything inside you screams to stay. I used to think strength was holding on. Now I know it's letting go when the weight no longer belongs to you. I'm starting a mentorship program for young immigrants. It's built on everything I've learned, the right way. No shortcuts. No dependencies. Just work, truth, and integrity. I want you to know your impact didn't end with me. This is the last time you'll hear from me. Not out of spite. Out of respect. Thank you. For everything. D. I closed the laptop and stared out the window. The city stretched out before me, familiar, but not final. That email wasn't a door reopening. It was the final click of a lock turning, gently. Diego had learned. But more importantly, I had healed. Later that year, I was offered a publishing deal. A compilation of essays, reflections, and strategies from my career, centered on integrity, resilience, and transformation. I titled it, Lessons in Letting Go. It was wildly successful. Not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. Women and men alike flooded my inbox with stories of how they'd let go of toxic love, toxic jobs, toxic habits. How they'd rediscovered their voice. And then came the speaking tours. Paris. Nairobi. Sao Paulo. It was humbling. I met a woman in Cape Town who told me, "You made me realize that walking away wasn't a failure." It was my first act of self-love. I hugged her. That's all I ever wanted. Years passed. I met someone. Not immediately. Not even soon. But one day, I was at a bookstore cafe, browsing, and a man asked me if I had read the book in my hand. It was Toni Morrison's Beloved. I said yes. He asked what I thought. I told him, "It teaches you how to live with ghosts." He smiled. That's the most honest answer I've heard. His name was Jordan. He was a literature professor. Gentle eyes, steady hands, and a quiet humor that never tried too hard. He didn't try to save me. He simply made space for me to exist, wholly. And that was everything. We built something different, quiet, safe, slow. Sometimes, I'd tell him stories of who I used to be. He never judged. Just listened. And one night, I told him everything. About Diego. About the green card. About the fake love that became real too late. Jordan just nodded. He helped you become her, he said, motioning to me. I'll always be grateful to him for that. And that was that. On the 10-year anniversary of my company, I stood before a new team of bright-eyed interns and gave them my parting message for the day. Sometimes, life hands you love with conditions. Don't take it. The love that transforms you should never come with fine print. If you have to lose yourself to keep someone, that's not love, it's negotiation. One of them raised their hand. What happened to the man who made you learn that? I smiled. He became better. But by the time he did, I had already become me. And with that, I stepped off the stage. Because some stories aren't meant to be rewritten. They're meant to be reread, only once, to remind you how far you've come. I used to believe payback had to hurt. That it meant making someone feel the same kind of devastation they handed to you. I used to dream of the perfect moment where they'd regret everything, beg for forgiveness, and I'd turn away without flinching. But real payback? It's quieter. Stronger. Braver. It's when you grow so far beyond the person who broke you that they couldn't reach you even if they tried. It's the moment you stop looking back, not because it doesn't hurt anymore, but because it no longer matters. Diego didn't leave my life in pieces. I left his, whole. And that has echoed in every moment since. I no longer tell this story from a place of pain. I tell it from a place of pride. Because I lived it. I survived it. And more importantly, I transformed because of it. So to anyone watching who has ever been used, lied to, or loved for the wrong reasons, don't burn down your life to prove a point. Rebuild it in silence. Let your glow be the only answer they'll never forget. Because the ultimate lesson I taught him wasn't through revenge, it was through my rise. And that was the real payback. Have you ever walked away from someone, not because you didn't love them, but because you finally loved yourself more? What was your turning point, and how did it change you? Share your story in the comments. You never know who your strength might inspire. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications, because we bring you real stories that don't just entertain, they empower. Like, comment, and share this video with someone who might need the reminder. Sometimes the greatest love story is the one you write with yourself. Until next time. Stay strong, stay wise, and never settle for anything less than a love that grows you.